Now here's the ignition side. This is a little bit trickier. This is where you're going to need some special tools to get this off. Sometimes they come right off. Other times they don't. You're going to want to be very careful because if there's a Woodruff key in there, it's a pin in Tomos, but you're going to want to be very careful with that. You will not have to mess with taking your gear off, so you don't have to worry about this at all unless you're re-gearing, which that's a whole nother video. So the easiest way to get this off, get your wrench in here, get your impact, whatever, get this nut off. I didn't have one lying around to show you, but yeah, so once you get that off, if this comes right off, hell yeah. If it doesn't, you're going to need a puller. There's threads in here. You thread the puller in there, and then there's a bolt that runs through the puller that you tighten until this pops off. Of course, mine wasn't bolted on, so the ignition, when you go to take that off, it's very easy. There's usually 2 or 3 bolts. You just take those off, and it comes right off. So, and then there's your ignition side seal. So if you're just changing your seals, there you go. Pop that in there, stick something sharp in there, and pull it out. Be careful not to damage your bearings on the inside if you're not doing a rebuild. So, Tomos rebuild. Here we go. So I've already taken off the transmission cover and removed the gaskets and everything in order to speed this video up because I can't make it too long here. So once you've got the transmission cover off, you need to make sure that all the shims came with it are still in the engine. Sometimes there's one on the end of this, not always, but sometimes there's one on the end of here. There's always a little one right here, and 1 or 2 larger ones here. Now these are easy to replace because they only fit in one place. For instance, this one's a little bit too big for this, and obviously not big enough for that. So first things first, you got to get your clutch off. Now when you do this, be very careful because you have to stop the piston. If you try to do it without it, the connecting rod here will move, and you're not going to get any torque on that nut. What I did is I put a extension in there, in the con rod there. Now you got to be very careful with this because sometimes you're going to need could put some ass behind it. So you want to be very careful. If you have something better than that will work, please do it. That's all I've got sitting around the wall I've ever used. This is a 17mm nut you're going to put through here. Put the wrench on it, crank it down. Now this one's already loose, so I've already got mine turned loose. Alright, with that nut off, make sure you put all of these in a place where you're going to remember. Use a little Tupperware bowl or a piece of paper and label them. Whatever you do, make sure you keep a hold of these. Now once that nut's off there, now there's a washer there so you can be careful. Once that's off there, this whole piece will slide out. Easy for everybody to make sure that stays together. Keep that washer there. If you want to inspect your clutches these are just used clutches I threw in here just to show you what's going on. But this is your first gear clutch. You're going to want to make sure you've got pads on here. I do not, obviously. This has been ran through something, God knows what. But set these aside. You can check your pads on your first gear, and your second gear is on the back here. See, the pads on my second gear are actually pretty awesome. So make sure there's no chips in these teeth. Make sure it looks okay. Now, so once you have your clutch off, you need to make sure that there's a shim right here, or else your clutches will be riding on this engine seal. That is bad, very, very bad. So make sure you get that shim out of there, and if you don't have one, you're going to need to look it up and get one. They're almost always there, though. So take that shim off, put it in your bucket. Alright, make sure that seal is in good shape. We'll get to that in a minute. This is your primary gears. This is what you want to watch out for. This has broken teeth right here. See, that's a broken tooth there. There's a couple up here. That's very, very bad. You cannot run this. So you're either going to need a new one of those, or hopefully you have one lying around like I do. So when you go to take these out, this is very easy because they come out as one piece. This is connected to the back of this, and make sure you get your shims off the end of here. Set them aside in your pile or bucket or whatever you're using. These come straight out. Pull them out. Sometimes they like to give you a little bit of trouble. It comes straight out. See, they're connected by that drive chain, which you also need to inspect. Make sure it's not broken or going bad or anything. Make sure all the teeth back here on everything look great. You're also going to want to take this primary gear apart. Make sure that is not cracked or broken in any way or shape. It should look just like this. Sometimes there's a sprag clip in there, sometimes there isn't. They break a lot, so a lot of people, you don't need those. I've never had a problem without running one. So set this aside, set this aside. Remember, make sure your teeth and everything on that chain are great. Set that aside. Then you have what I know some people call this a peanut clip. So I don't. It's like a sprag. This is what allows you to pedal backwards to start the bike and pedal forwards where it doesn't engage. So this, you need to make sure all your teeth are good on this thing. This clip needs to be on here, otherwise it's a pain. They sell these on treats if yours is broken. So set that aside as well. Now, this is the other side that you need to look for. This seal here, this is very easy to replace. Stick something in there sharp and pull it out. Sometimes it'll come right out, sometimes it falls out. I've had experiences both ways. So get that seal out of there. You can use a pick, you can use needle nose pliers. Sometimes they're a little harder to get out. But when you get them out, you'll be able to see your bearings. All right, ladies and gents, it's time to take your cases apart. This is the fun part. So once you got your ignition and your transmission apart, all taken apart there are what looks to be 7 bolts you need to look for. There's 5 in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I've only got a couple in there at the moment. And then there's one down here and one up here, the back. This is very easy. You get your 5mm Allen wrench, and me personally, using a T-handle will make this so much faster. And if you have a Harbor Freight near you, you can get those this kit right here. It comes with a bunch of sets of them. This is a 5mm T-handle, and you just get these in here and pop them out. Some of them will give you a little bit of trouble, sometimes they won't. But do never torque on these. If you can't get them apart, be very easy, because once they're stripped, they are a bitch to get out. I can tell you that. I've definitely done that before. Alright, and once you have all of those bolts out, I only had 2 in there just to show you guys how this works. You can, the easiest way I've found, sometimes this is kind of hard, sometimes it's not. I've never had a problem doing it otherwise, unless it's like super gunky in there, but this crank is pretty much toast. So, also this engine you're looking at here, it's an A35. All the stuff I've been showing you is A35. It's just this weird year crossover cases where it's got the A55 cases. Some people prefer these because they have so much meat over here if you were to ever case match. Alright, so to get these apart, you can either grab each end of these. Be careful, because you don't want to break or strip the insides of this. Believe me, you don't want to do that. Alright, sorry about the shitty angle, but here's what you do. Grab both sides of these and work it apart. And once you get gaps in here, you can stick whatever you've got handy in here, but do not mess up the mating surfaces. Stick this in here. Just pop it apart. Just keep working it apart until... there's a couple ways you can do this. Be real careful doing it the way I'm about to do it, because you can mess up these threads on the end of your crank. Just take it right here, tap it a couple times. Sometimes that crank will come right out for you. This crank is in bad condition, as you can tell. It's pretty burnt up. The crankshaft makes some funny sounds. Then you want to make sure your woodruff pin in there, right here, is in there and not spun or anything. Now when you look in your cases here, you're going to want to make sure there's no metal shavings in here. You're going to clean this all up if you can. Run it under some water. Who cares? Just get it clean. And when you split your cases, you're going to want to make sure that you get all the whatever gasket materials is left on the edge of this thing. You want to clean that off. Get your Dremel in a wire brush or something. Just don't mess up the mating surfaces, because that would be very bad. So clean up all the gasket material you can get off of here and wash these if you like. Be careful washing the other side, because there's bearings inside of those gears. Alright, when reinstalling your bearings, the easiest way to go about doing this is to throw your bearings in the freezer for a couple hours. Overnight, it doesn't matter how long, just make sure they're still in their plastic sleeve so no condensation gets on them. But yeah, after Frozen those for about overnight. This is not a new bearing. This is a used one I'm using for demonstration purposes, but the easiest way to do it, freeze these overnight, both of them. And then when it comes time to reinstall in the cases, you can use your torch, or you can put these in the oven, however you want to do it safely. Heat your cases up. So when you go to put your bearings back in here, they should fall right down in there nice and smoothly. Even if they don't, rubber hammer, tap them on down in there. They don't have to be perfectly flush. I'll show you the way I do it here in a bit. Alright, now this part can get kind of tricky. Reassembly. You've got both your bearings in there, roughly where they need to be. This is when you're going to be reassembling your engine here. So here's what you're going to want to do. Make sure you've got the the correct way. You put the crank in the right way. You don't want to put this all together and have the crank in the wrong direction. So this is the transmission side. You can tell because it's got the peanut in there. Put your crankshaft in with those splines facing that way. Now it'll be okay. This might not set right in there with these new bearings. This one sets right in. It's kind of nice. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure you can put a zip tie or string, but you're going to want to make sure this crankshaft is in this opening. Otherwise, you'll mess up your gasket that you've set along here. That's another thing I forgot. Do not forget to put your gaskets on here. And when you set these on here, make sure you're on a flat surface. Set your gasket on here. Now there will be pins that you could set, or you could throw some gasket material on there to keep them from sticking on there. So make sure your gasket is set in here perfectly, because if it's not and it catches right here, you'll have an air leak and you'll have to do this all over again. All right. So once you have your crankshaft sitting in the one side, take your other side. I usually like to do the heavy side on top so I'm not hurting myself here. Set it on the crankshaft. You can squeeze it a little bit. Most of the time they don't fall all the way on there like that. So what you're going to do, especially if your bearings aren't seated all the way down in there, you'll have a gap like this, or maybe it's not even set in there at all and it's real high up and messed up. So what I do, and I found this to work every time I've rebuilt one and I've never had a problem with it. Get your Allens, and hopefully they're long enough. And hopefully you haven't misplaced them like I just did. I'm an idiot. There's one. Alright, so put your Allens in one of the holes here. Put it on this side. Tighten it down until it bites. You tighten it down until you can. Now you're not going to want to put a whole lot of torque on these yet. Get another Allen. Put it in the opposite side. Just like when you're tightening down the lug nuts on a car, you're not going to want to, tighten these down right next to each other. It's going to make these bearings seat on the crankshaft. So tighten these down, and once they're tight, give them each a couple of turns, and eventually your crank, you'll hear probably a little couple popping sounds. That's okay, but just keep tightening these, all 5. Keep tightening until these are seated, and make sure your gasket's set in there correctly, or like I said, you're gonna have to do this all over again or buy a new gasket. So keep tightening them. I'm just doing 2 for now, because this engine's easy. Alright, so once you got that in there, and you got your crankshaft in the right end of this, you get your gasket set in there, congratulations, the hard part's over. Next, you're going to want to install your seals. If you didn't take them out before, you take them out now. They probably have popped out either way. Got your new seal. This is not a new seal, it's just for demonstration. It's real easy. You set this on here, and then you push. Sometimes they're not so easy. Sometimes they are. There you go. Make sure that sits there flush and it's down below the lip on the crankshaft. This one's going to be easy because it's a used seal. Sometimes you can get a really, really big socket. Put it over here and just tap it down in there. Sometimes you can just, use anything. Get that tap down in there. Do not scratch it. Don't puncture it or anything, or you'll be screwed. You'll have an air leak. Same on both sides. This one already has one on this side, so I don't need to reinstall this one. Alright. So your engine's together. Now, on to the next step. Alright, now once you've got your engine back together, you've got all 7 bolts. 5 here, 2 on the back. Make sure those are in there. Once you got that all together, it's time to put your transmission back together. First thing you're going to want to do is get your gears. and your pedal shaft and put those together. They go together like this. See, there's that big spline there. Ta-da! They're together. Alright. Now, before you put this back together, you can either do it this way. See your little sprag clip here? That's for starting the bike when you kick it backwards. You can either set it down in here on those teeth so it sets, but that peanut has to be in there, so be careful. Damn it. Alright. Alright. I guess I'm just gonna hold it. Set your shaft down in there. Slides right in. Shouldn't have a problem with this part. Make sure that chain stays connected to those gears. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a bearing down in there that this sits, this part here, it sets in. Make sure that's in that bearing. And then just work your way in. This is giving me trouble in the past. I hate this part. Gotta make sure this is set in there correctly. It'll slide all the way down in. Now, that looks just about right. Things are spinning. Alright, you can check. But that looks about right. So this is recessed down in here. This sits up a little bit. Alright. Now you're going to want to make sure you have your shim on the bottom of the clutch. Make sure that's on there. This is not the right shim. I'm just showing you. There's a shim that goes right through down there. And put your clutches right back over there. Sometimes your first wheel will try to jump, but when that shim down in there, that does not grind. That spins freely. Now if you hear a grind like, that's bad. That means your shim is not thick enough. Alright. Now I'll throw your washer there. Put this back on here. Use the same method for torquing this down as before. You can put an extension from your socket wrench in the crankshaft, whatever you want to do, but you need to make sure that's tight. If you have an impact wrench, just zip, put it on there. Not too much. You don't want to over torque this. Then your transmission, it is together. Congratulations. Next step after your transmission is together. You want to make sure everything's working, make sure your clutch pads are okay. Your transmission cover, put the gasket on. You can either put it on here, but you're going to make sure it's lined up too, or you're just going to have a big fluidy mess all over the place. So make sure your gasket's on there, put your transmission cover back on. Be careful, you don't want to over torque these bolts. They don't need to be super tight. Make sure you have all the bolts in your transmission cover, your drain bolt, the check bolt, and the fill bolt. That's it for this side. Here's the part that seems to confuse people. I don't know why. Now, when you put your ignition back on, you could have marked it before you taken it off. You could have done whatever, but this is very easy right here. This is all you got to do. On your ignition, there will be a mark, usually on the top left of the ignition. See it? The focus, there it goes. Now you're going to line that up. Now, one of these marks is going to be top dead center, and one of these marks is going to be fire. Now, all kinds of there's several kinds of transmission cases, or I'm sorry, tomos cases. Some don't have these, some do. Some have them in different places. Make sure that's when you want to mark it before you take it off. This is as easy as it comes. You line that mark up. In this case, it's the top mark. When you have these cases, it is the top mark. Throw your bolt in there, and of course, this one's an Allen. I couldn't tell you what size. I believe it's 3 millimeters. Now this one lines up just perfect. Get your top bolt in there. Make sure that notch is lined up with this top line right here. You can mess with timing later. There's other tutorials on how to do that. And then the other bolt will go down here on the bottom. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Alright. Then you put your magneto back on. This is easy. There's a line in there where your pin, right here, there's a little pin. Do you see it? That pin needs to be lined up with that line. If you try to force this on here, you're going to have bad times. That is how your bike times. It's how you do your timing on your bike. So, line it up, slide it on. Slid right on there. Perfect. And you're going to get your nut. Thread it on there. I probably have the wrong nut. Whatever. Now, you can impact this on. You can do whatever you want, but be very careful. You do not want this to spin and take out that little pin. It's very fragile. Now, at this point, you can put your ignition cover back on. I would leave it off so you can mess with timing later on if you know how to do that.
You're dumb. You're dumb. Same thing. Still dumb.
Hey Murph, you're dumb.
No, you're dumb.
No, you're dumb.
Well, you're dumb because you got glasses on.
Well, you're dumb.
Your nose is funny and dumb.
Oh yeah, well your eyes are dumb.
Well, I'm gonna sing while you're dumb.